of science, a documentarian of history, an architect of societal structure, and a silent partner in the progression of the human experience. It has also been a philosopher and a mystic that has faced more ethereal ideologies like omnipotence and infinity and perceptual bias. So my questions became, how do exactly we conceptualize time? What influences how we classify, quantify, and value it? And then how do those influences impact our individual and collective decisions? For example, one of my first childhood memories were how the months leading up to Christmas felt like walking through molasses. How could time move so slowly? In fact, for a few years, I started watching Christmas movies and singing, "Here Comes Santa Claus," midsummer, as if my exceptional holiday spirit and sweaty snow dances were going to make Santa come early. However, while I was carrying my sacrificial burden of good behavior and patience, my mother, who thankfully did not burn my VHS tapes, could not have been having a more opposite experience. She already felt like there wasn't enough time in the day, and Christmas didn't exactly perpetuate more me time. So while she loved the holidays, thinking about how she was going to split minutes into atoms in July did not match my level of enthusiasm. Now, I chose this story for a few reasons. As a burden-free child, I perceived the world to be moving at the pace of a turtle. However, my mom, who likely had more responsibility than she actually signed up for, the world was moving so fast that she felt like she could barely keep up. And I think this is really valuable because it shows how our individual perceptions can create juxtaposed realities despite referencing the exact same experience or similar information. It is also a great example of how time organically transitions based on where we are in life. So aging and new experiences, facing adversities, more responsibilities, begin to collect these reference points along our timeline. And those things shape the trajectory of how we ultimately experience, engage with, and respond to the world. And rightfully so, our experiences influence us. However, it is really, really important that we do remember how to preserve the ability to make sure that we are applying our viewpoints to as objective approaches, and rather than reinforcing bias. Now, I wasn't sure if I was going to use this next example or not, but how could I not at least highlight one of the most collectively synchronistic events that hit the world so hard it seemed to instantly fracture the time-space continuum? And that was COVID-19. While it is impossible to calculate when free time mutated from something pleasurable to overwhelming loss, I do think it is plausible to consider that the degradation of routine and the evisceration of our social commitments was jarring and confusing. Living without a sense of urgency in uncertainty diluted our perspective of having to adhere to a clock. Without structure, at least for me, it questioned the legitimacy of historical normalcy and social requirements. However, what relatability couldn't hold on to, resiliency returned with a universal moment of connection. It gave us the ability to understand one another across the barriers of the ocean and language and culture. I mean, think about that for just a second. COVID-19 wove us all together in unimaginable ways across the globe. That said, collective relatability cannot exist without the kinship of diversity. There are currently 8,271,633,272 people living simultaneously on this planet. And every single one of them has a story that's important. Every single one of you has a story that is crucial to furthering compassion over condition, kindness over apathy, and inclusion over division. And inclusion isn't just a concept or an idea or a should. Inclusion is a compilation of 8,271,633,272 brilliant, unique lifelines that we all need, whether we know it or not. So tonight, I thought that I would share some of my story with you. Now, I'm not going to back up way far because there are some things that are better left unsaid. However, there are also some things in my background, some puzzle pieces that I think are helpful for you to understand. So, growing up in rural North Carolina as an only child, you had meant one of two things. You either learned how to entertain yourself or accept an early fate of what would surely be death by boredom. However, thankfully, I had a propensity to be curious and tinkered with everything I touched. So this would eventually lead to a deep fascination to understand how things work and to give me some pretty proficient glue stick skills. I still hold back to the future responsible for the assortment of household items that I may or may not have disassembled in the name of scientific ingenuity. However, I point this out because learning the value of independent inquisition would become vital to my well-being and my ability to help others in the future. My answer to, because this is how we've always done it, will eternally be, but why? Now, despite popular belief, my busy brain served me well academically. I graduated with a 4.0 and got accepted into a university. However, when I got there, I realized I didn't want to be. I wasn't ready. I needed to sort through some of those things that had been left unsaid. So I found some other people who were also winging it through life. And I played a lot of music, I smoked a lot of cigarettes, I ate a lot of pizza, and I drank a lot of coffee. It was refreshing, though, to just exist for a while. Then one day, I decided to go on a date. And as fate would have it, or probably my tendency to be impulsive, we got married 5 weeks later. No, I was not pregnant, just to be clear. But there was something, even though as unorthodox as it was, there was something about it that worked. And for the next 5 years, I would cut my teeth on adulthood, on new experiences, existential conversations, and cuisine that would finally surpass my inherited palate of fast food. This part of my life, where spontaneity overruled responsibility, has reserved a place inside of me of youthful ignorance and dumb decisions that I still laugh about. We moved a lot, we did a lot of things, we had a lot of fun. We opened a juice bar and a sushi restaurant. But the pivotal moment came in 2003 when we welcomed our beautiful baby boy into the world. He was perfect. However, becoming new parents and trying to manage a business eventually incurred an imbalance that we could not recover from, and we ended up parting ways. Now, while I will never regret that decision, the decade that followed would have more challenges and changes than I could have ever imagined. See, my family doesn't live here, and so becoming a single mom and working multiple jobs and trying to juggle out things with limited childcare felt like juggling bowling balls some days. I even had a few chefs waiting tables that I put them on my back because I was out of options. Made good tips those days. We were a dynamic little duo, and it was super tough, but we figured it out. Then in 2009, I was blessed again with a beautiful baby girl. In fact, that one right up there, who has become one of the most amazing humans I know. Unfortunately, though, life happened again, and my role as a single mom got reinstated. But something was different this time. Now, I'm not sure if it was the exhaustion or the continued instability, but somehow this time the consumption of failure had finally stolen more space than hope. The strength that I had always been able to find and wrap around these moments and situations and survive had been replaced by an internal topography that I didn't recognize. My speech of perseverance suddenly became a mouthful of regurgitated words that I chewed into resentment and slammed down with a shot of whiskey and created a narrative that would nearly kill me. Now, before I go any further, I want to be very, very clear that my intention in sharing any of this evening is to help share how everyone has a timeline that has written a story behind the story, and how that story can contribute to a disconnect within ourselves. However, I am aware that some of you in this room may have been really hurt at some point by someone who struggled with drugs or alcohol. And for that, from me to you, I am so sorry. But I want to reassure you that none of what I am saying is a concession to justify any harmful decisions, behaviors, or dismiss accountability that often comes with addiction. I learned a long time ago that I was responsible for my choices, and if that was also for you, those people are too. So there's a lot of verbiage that I don't love and that I feel is either overused or underexplained when it comes to talking about stigmatic topics. Therefore, I have found that using personification can be really helpful. It provides a more tangible perspective to wrap around things that can be difficult to understand or articulate. So tonight, I'm going to be referring to my struggle with alcohol as a guy named Joe. And Joe and I are in a relationship. I've met Joe a few times before, but I really got to know him when I became a bartender. He was one of those guys, he was just always around, and he was fun. I mean, he definitely brought the party to the party. However, after my last move, when things weren't going so great, he and I started to hang out more. Man, he was easy to be with, and he was always available to come over when I called. And then without even realizing it, one day I blurted out, "Hey, we should move in together." And voila, a friendship rolled into a relationship over a cocktail napkin and a swizzle stick. And we were in that relationship pretty hardcore for about 1.5 years before things started to get bad. And in the beginning, woo, What a blast, let me tell you. Parties, socializing, we watched movies, we laughed, and we sang really bad karaoke. He made me feel confident, fun, and like I didn't have a care in the world. But about a year later, it was good until it wasn't. About a year later, things started to get a little bumpy. We were staying home more. We watched a lot more television. And then we started arguing. And I hated our fights. He would say some really hurtful things and then forget the next day. Sometimes being with him was so exhausting and felt obligatory, but I loved him, and I couldn't imagine my life without him. Then one day, he started waking me up by playing really loud music, and it was confusing. And I would ask him to turn it down, and he would, but it would always be in the background. Then he started blaring the TV at this top volume all day long at a level where I couldn't even think. And no matter what I seemed to do, it wouldn't make him stop. But finally, I got him to move out. And it would be great for a few days. But then I would see him on TV or in an ad, and then he must be special because every sandwich board I walked past told me so. So it made it really hard to stop thinking about him. He was everywhere I looked. So I started romanticizing him. Man, that's right, he was so charming and sophisticated. And you know, we really did have more good times than bad, right? And I remember the first bam. That was the sound of my hangover as I tried to pry my head off of the pillow and peel my eyeballs off the back of my forehead from another sweaty, sticky, smelly, shaky night with Joe. I felt so gross and disappointed in myself. And soon after that, the noise and the confusion and the despair became unbearable. And because I didn't grow up around alcohol, I had to Google Joe's name, in which I learned so many more things about him that I didn't know. But it was relieving. Things finally made a little more sense. And that night, I made a decision that I was going to find someone to help me get Joe out of my life forever. And on November 17th, 2014, I did just that. Now, my sobriety has taught me many, many things. But time has taught me that time takes time. What I was looking for required consistent energy and effort. That was a process, not a participation award. But one of the most humbling things, one of the most powerful things that I learned was that I didn't get to decide how long it took someone that I had hurt to forgive me. That was on their time, not mine. And so now, over 11 years later, my story behind the story has gifted me the opportunity to help other people walk through really tough moments. I became a certified peer support specialist and a certified alcohol and drug counselor. My hope is that maybe if we stop a little longer and we listen a little harder and we look a little deeper, that maybe history will repeat itself a little less. Because time isn't something that we can make more or lose track of, but rather something that we miss if we're not paying attention. As T.S. Eliot states in the Four Quartets, if all time is eternally present, then all time is unredeemable. And he's exactly right. However, I think I actually like Charles Mackes's version better from his book, Always Remember. He wrote The Boy, the Foal, Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. He states, which is best, asked the boy, finding cake or eating it? Finding it with you, said the mole. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me this evening, for listening. And remember, while people may not always remember everything that you do, they will always remember how you made them feel. Thank you.